Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to Samuel Adams Returns. Those Anti-federalists, they did. They unequivocally, absolutely got it right. And this is Tom Navolis, your host, and we're going to talk about how correct, how right, how predictive those Anti-federalists were. I mean, you hear me say that all the time, but we're going to get into that as we move through the program today because as it went out in the promo, your vote doesn't count. Your vote doesn't count. And, there's more there. And again, thanks for new subscribers. I see that we have some new subscribers both to the newsletter and to the podcast and programming. Our numbers there are starting to go up. So with that, and I'm going to do it in each and every program, is I'm going to ask you to continue to let others know I think and I believe, and those that have listened to the program, read my books, all of that, that the content that we deliver is unlike anything else out there. There's a lot of great academic stuff. I mean, you could look at Hillsdale College. I would say they're about premier. But, for a two-person show, that means Kath and I, in doing all of this with no funding except out of our own pocketbooks, I think we do pretty good. And it shows because we have some loyal listeners and some new listeners coming on that I didn't have to go trip them out in the street to get them to sign up either. So, hey, thank you again to our new listeners that are on here. So, the expression of the day is, what's going on? What's really going on? Look, with this whole coronavirus thing, I'm not going to go down the path of all of that. I have very strong feelings. I expressed some of that last week. One anecdote to last week that I do want to mention is that, again, if you go and you're taking and doing any study in the book of Numbers, if you have the propensity to go read the Bible, it's kind of funny. I think it's humorous, sad, but humorous. So here you got this rebellion of these couple hundred people against Moses, and they do what God said to do. Come, a bunch of them go do the census. You had a couple said they're not coming out of their tents, and they get swallowed up with their families in an earthquake where the earth opened and closed right back up, taking these people down. Interesting. All right. And then those there that were in front of the tabernacle with their censers, they got all burned up, right? The only thing left was the censers. And then, God tells Moses and Aaron to go collect all of the censers and beat them into like shields, plates, discs to mount on the altar so that people remembered, don't do that again. The very next day, Israel comes before Moses and complains. Once again, rebellion, saying that they killed God's chosen. Well, wait a minute. How did Moses and Aaron make the earth open up and swallow, two families? And how was it that when Moses and Aaron were over there with those families getting swallowed up, that these other people were flamed, toasted, incinerated, dust? And so the people are complaining. Hey, God goes to Moses and Aaron. They're falling before God, and he goes, I'm going to destroy them. They're done with. So here, once again, God takes and starts annihilating the people with a plague. And only because Moses told Aaron to go fill a censer and go out there and go pray for the people and go with the censer into the crowd of the people, that it stopped, the plague stopped because of that intercession. But over 14,000 people died in that moments in time so I guess when I again look at all this that's going on, we have become too dependent. And that was a sigh of exasperation, that our foundation was not that. In fact, I'm going to give you a quote from Moses Allen, who is the pastor and became chaplain. That's in chapter 34 of the Chaplains and Clergy of the Revolution, that will be going up this week as well, with chapter 34, chapter 35. But the statement about Moses Allen, and again, I will always point and forever do so based on my understanding of scriptures and history at the pulpits. The pulpits lead culture. The pulpits, by leading culture and ensuring that we are that moral and virtuous people that have a capacity to act and to be predominant and to have dominion, when they're not doing that job, then we have what we have. So, you know what? I put it to that. And the expectations and everybody going squirrely. What's going on? Well, you're going squirrely because you don't understand those fundamentals that I said in the last program. God's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And if that's true, you know what? Models don't matter. The whole idea of making a vaccine doesn't matter. That's grasping at man, trying to be God. And yeah, we have technology. We have all that stuff's good. That's God-given. I'm not saying it's not. But at the same time, the real meat of the matter is it's not economy, and it's not the intelligentsia, as Thomas Sowell would say. No, it's your and my personal relationships with God and how we are led and nurtured and fostered by those pastors that will teach us how to fight. Like, hey, Moses Allen. All right, I got to put my spectacles on, so I am a spectacle for all of you that are watching this on YouTube. Moses Allen, a classmate of Madison. He was a pastor in South Carolina. And so what I'm going to do is, just before I move on to everything else, I want and just to hammer home that point that the chaplains, the clergy of the American Revolution, have been left out of our history as the value, importance, the resounding core of why we were able to do and attain what we did. So here's a quote from Headley in that. Though surrounded by Tories in his new home, being in South Carolina, where he was asked to pastor, some of whom formed a part of his congregation, he took open ground against the mother country. He thought it no sacrilege to preach rebellion from the pulpit. And though remonstrated with and threatened, he continued to denounce the aggressive measures of Great Britain as insulting and tyrannical, declaring they never should be submitted to, and called on his people to arm in defense of their country and its most sacred rights. Hey, when was the last time you heard a mega church pastor take and say, go arm yourself, because you need to be able to protect your rights ultimately? When was the last time that you heard a megachurch pastor, and there's a few out there, I mean, Franklin Graham, Doug Wilson, what we have in Mike Spalding, what we have in some of those that are in relationship to those particular people, they'll stand up and they'll say abortion is despotic, tyrannical, evil. You know, the things that Moses Allen did and some of the others, and if you go to the Chaplains and Clergy of the Revolution, what I put up in chapters 32 and 33, when these pastors prayed, they prayed God for the destruction of evil. Now, whoa, this wasn't some, Old Testament biblical storytelling. Folks, this was the reality of our foundational history, was to call out evil from the pulpit, call out despotism, call out tyranny, and to be active. And being active is you don't submit to this stuff. You don't allow it in your whole cultural being. You don't allow it to shut down your churches. You don't allow it to shut down your economy. And you take and you establish yourself for defense. All right. That's all I have to say about the coronavirus insanity. But the most important part of that's in the program notes. So when you go to samueladamsreturns.net, there's a PDF there that you can download for the program notes. And the first thing that I have in there is Moses Allen and that statement that Mr. Headley wrote in relationship to him. And I would encourage you to read the whole profile on him. Amazing. Amazing how he acted upon which he believed. And then when the troops in Georgia were sent south because of the British and the Indians invading and killing and causing havoc, he jumped right in, both feet, went there, and he knew that God was the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So with that, what we're going to talk about is you don't have any vote anymore. You do not have any vote anymore. My greatest fear for Ohio and what I'm seeing across the many states, except for Wisconsin, I applaud you, Wisconsin. I applaud you because, as Donald Trump says, as the Anti-federalists say, as Samuel Adams said, it is your responsibility to go to the polls. It is your God-given right to go to the polls. Everything else is perversion. And what we're going to get into as we move into the second and third segments, we're going to start going through a Federalist statement from Madison in Federalist 10. And then we're going to get into more anti-federalist writings and statements about the congressional power over our elections than what I remembered. And going through and rereading and looking at and searching through the anti-federalist papers, only 85 of them, that I'm overwhelmed. And yeah, there's 10 pages of notes. And a couple of these, I put the full essay or I put the complete commentary from that anti-federalist paper in these notes, which makes it a little bit longer. But the body of that is so relevant to today that is why I said in the opening a few minutes ago that this was predicted. Everything that is going on, the actions of the Democrats, and the yellow-belliedness of the Republicans, except for a few, because Trump is providing the leadership, their yellow scales are kind of being opened up and exposed, that their heart's there to be able to pierce. The whole point is that the Anti-Federalists nailed it, and they nailed it on this issue in particular around voting, around your vote, and that your vote could and would be perverted if the people of the nature that are in Congress got to Congress, and that the power of the federal government was beyond what is guaranteeing liberty. And we're going to talk about that as we come back in the second segment. So Samuel Adams, yes, he did. He is returning today, and those Anti-Federalists, they got it right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Samuel Adams Returns Those Anti-Federalists. They did, as we said in the first segment, they predictively absolutely got it right. And this is Tom Navolis, your host, and all of you that are out there listening at Liberty Works Radio Network, I'm so delighted that you're on and listening to the program. I would ask that let 10 other people know. Let several others know. As I mentioned in the first segment, I think we have content, not just think, I know, I'm seeing it more and more every day. I know that the content of this program, there's nobody else like it. Nobody else like it out there. And the fact is that we are dealing with the mirrors of history, and there is other great programming at Liberty Works Radio Network. I encourage you all that are listening to go and hit that donate button and keep this network going and the opportunities for me to be here with you. So I'm very thankful for that. So at the break, Kath and I were talking about a bit about Moses Allen, that minister that didn't see it to be an issue. He did not see, and here's the key word. He did not see it to be a sacrilege to take and preach rebellion, proper, godly, Republican, and I don't mean the political party, liberty, which is all Reformation biblical truth. He didn't see that as rebellion to be preached from the pulpit. He saw that to be truth. He saw that to be what the reformers were looking at when they were fighting for the liberty of the Word of God, as well as then the liberty of the nations. Again, historically, if we didn't have the Reformation, the world would have already been enslaved until there was a Reformation, because it's only Jesus Christ that can set anybody free. He's the key piece. He's the key person. He's the key element in all of science that there is, all of humanity, all of psychology, all of anything. He is liberty. And without his liberty, you don't have any. All right? So let's set that as the basis. And that's what Moses Allen was really on, is that if you don't have God's liberty through Jesus Christ, you don't have liberty. So I guess you can have an economy. But so Kath and I were talking, and she goes, you know what? There's no preacher out there today that she can recall, except for the few that I mentioned in the first segment, that have the intestinal fortitude to take and preach as Moses Allen preached. I said, well, the majority of them don't know better. She goes, come on, they got to know better. That's got to, no. Remember the cemeteries that a lot of the biblical schools, I call them cemeteries, and Bible colleges and all of that, have communist teaching in those schools no different than there are in the other institutions. So they're all institutions. We should just kind of shut the doors on all of those professors and that and say, hey, they're institutionalized. And give them all, the funny jacket that wraps their arms in front of them. That would be good. I think we still should defund all of them, including any of the Christian schools that get public money. They should be defunded as well, because, again, majority of them have professors that teach wrong. As I say, there's a school not far from here in Pennsylvania, just across the Ohio border, that one of the mega churches here, there's a professor there on history that they kowtow to, and the guy's wrong. He's just flat out wrong. And bottom line is, I don't want to take much more time on that, but that was kind of a conversation. So for as much as I beat up on a lot of pastors, and there's a good sermon I heard the other day by Toby Sumter again, is that, you know what, they're doing God's work for the salvation message. Perfect. I mean, that Jesus said, yeah, leave them alone, they're doing that, and fine. But when it comes to how we are as a society in our republic, it was always intended that we would have that moral and virtuous people, and there is no reason whatsoever to be in the state of affairs that we are in this modern 21st April of 2020, the 21st century, no reason to be where we are today, except the pulpits have failed. And it goes to that whole component that, yes, preach the gospel because salvation is absolutely, unequivocally an eternal message. But you know what? The Bible also says we should be able to live in peace. We should be able to have property. We should be able to exercise dominion over the world. And you can't exercise that dominion, that biblical dominion, without understanding the extensibility of the gospel from this historical perspective and what those chaplains and clergy preached at the foundation of the nation. Otherwise, you know what? You all be what Sam Adams called, you'd be all captured by bishopry. You'd all be part of the Anglican, old 1700 Anglican establishment under a kingship. That's where you'd be. So now you're under everything that the Anti-federalists predicted. So let's get to this, that you don't have a vote. You don't have a vote. And this was the thing that I mentioned or started mentioning in the first segment, was that when everybody was barking about the primary, I could care less. Cancel the darn thing. It's only a primary. Who gives a rip? But everybody going, oh no, we have to have a vote. We have to have that mail-in vote. We have to have that ability to vote. They're taking our right away. It's a primary. It didn't matter. But the door is wide open to satisfy political parties and even to satisfy money interest when it comes to levies. The door has been wide open and, in fact, established, especially in states, as President Trump talked about the other day, in Washington, Oregon, and several others. But I'm familiar with what happened in Washington because we were there when it happened, and they took our ballot box away from us. And I'm going to tell you, there was corruption, deep corruption in the vote in Washington state, because I was there. I saw it. Kath and I were there. We participated in trying to fight it. So, with that, okay, people say, oh, that's at the state level. No, what we have here and what you have in these 10 pages and what I have in the notes for you in that PDF is what the Anti-federalists predicted. And we're going to go over just a few right now, but I wanted to start with something that Madison said out of Federalist number 10. And this is important. He goes, if a faction consists of less than a majority, relief is supplied by the Republican principle, which enables the majority to defeat its sinister views by regular vote. It may clog the administration, it may convulse the society, but it will be unable to execute and mask its violence under the forms of the Constitution. When a majority is included in a faction, the form of popular government, on the other hand, enables it to sacrifice to its ruling passions or interests both the public good and the rights of other citizens. You have to digest that. I could spend 5 programs just talking about that portion of Federalist number 10, and I only have 5 minutes left in this segment. Let me tell you, right there's ways with the regular vote to take care of a crazy leftist, communist, Marxist, anti-God, anti-Constitution, anti-American minority. If the principle works. But when the majority, and what we're seeing with the Democrats in the House, when that majority is there, then what it does, it enables that all sacrifices are made of the public good and the rights of other citizens. So right now, what's being sacrificed by having the Democrats in there is our right to vote. Because what is in Article 1, Section 4 talks about Congress having the power over elections. So when people start looking at that, and if you do and you dig into it, you will see in there that they have the right to choose the time, the place, and the method of electing federal officers. So can state elections be what they want to be? Yeah. But the state elections, many decades ago, what they did is they aligned themselves because of the cost of an election. So they took and they aligned themselves with the federal government, except for primaries. I don't give a rip about primaries. They're for political parties and for special interests, being schools and levies and all of that other nonsense, which rips you off out of your taxpayer dollar, especially in Ohio. It's pretty egregious. But when it comes to the federal elections, and now lining up on all of these other state elections, we now have a common day. And that common day is, I think this year is what, November 3rd, Kat? November 3rd. So we're coming to November 3rd, and we're going to talk about the warnings in the third segment as we get into the Anti-Federalist papers. In particular, there are some that, I know people have emailed me and said, Tom, do you really expect us to read this stuff? And you've heard me say this before. Well, yeah, I do. I really do expect you, because if you're out there operating just on the emotional idea of it, because remember, I have said for 20 years that we have an American DNA in us, even the leftists. There's an American DNA in there. I mean, their genetics may be way smaller than, people listening to this program. But the fact and the reality is that DNA is there. And when we take and we start looking at what are our rights to vote, well, we need to understand that constitutional perspective. But we also need to understand what I have said over and over and over again, is that, what's happened is that people don't understand this, but the enemy has studied it. Part of their inherent DNA as Marxist, socialists, communists, jihadists, haters of God, haters of our republic, haters of our Declaration of Independence, haters of the whole idea of our Constitution, they have a DNA also. And their DNA is smarter than your DNA, because they went and they studied this stuff, and I bet you that they read some of the Anti-Federalist papers. And that's why I said Obama was at the University of Chicago, because the greatest resource of those are there. And with that, they have taken and worked according to that. And now Pelosi, Pocahontas, and all of the others of the Democrats that are saying we want to go to mail-in ballot, they know they can do it. They know that they have the constitutional right to tell you and me how we're going to vote. And if they wanted to, they could tell us where we're going to vote. They could tell us that you have to all go to Columbus from the whole state of Ohio to vote for all your federal officers. Yeah, Sam Adams commented on that. So did a lot of the other Anti-Federalists. So come on back in the third segment as we get through some of these anti-federalists getting it right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this third segment of Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti-federalists, they absolutely got it right. Hi, hey, I'm Tom Navolis here with you again, and the archives for the program are at samueladamsreturns.net. Go there. Let others know, please. We had some new subscribers lately, and I would ask everybody to share this with at least 10 people. You know, I've seen in one of the other promos, there's a couple of people that I've seen shared it with 20, 30, 40 other people, just the promo alone from last week. So I would ask you, continue to do that. It's really going to help what we're doing and that the message gets out. Hey, all of you folks down there in Lima, welcome back again. Thank you very much to Kathy and Dr. Mike Spalding. I really appreciate being on your network, and all those that may be listening this evening is Saturday evening. And I got ahead of myself because, as you well know, here on Liberty Works Radio Network, we're on 3 different time slots. So with that, we're going to just jump in. So you can't vote. Your vote. So based on the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, Congress can tell you when, where, and what method you can vote for federal officers. That means you're a congressperson, and now you're a senator, because remember, when the Constitution was written, there was no 17th Amendment, and it was appointed by the states, is where the senators were appointed by the states. I've done programs on the 17th Amendment. Go to the archives at samueladamsreturns.net. Go into the search bar, type 17th Amendment, and you'll get an earful. Yeah, you will. Then that also includes for president. So the primary one is that the Congress, the House of Representatives in particular, because it's in Article 1, can dictate to us the time frame, location, and the method by which we are allowed to vote for our federal representatives. Fuhrer, a farmer and planter, wrote in the Maryland Journal, Baltimore Advisor, April 1st, 1788. That's my birthday. Well, maybe not 1788, but anyhow, some people would think so. I'm told that 4 of the richest men in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, have offered themselves candidates to serve in the convention, who are all in favor of the new federal government. Let me beg of you candidates to serve in the convention who are all in favor of the new federal government. But let me beg of you this, to reflect a moment on the danger you run. If you choose these men or others like them, they certainly will do everything in their power to adopt the new government. Should they succeed, your liberty is gone forever. Anti-federalists warn this over and over and over. Not that they didn't want to have a constitution, but your liberty is gone forever, and you will then be nothing better than a strong ass crouching down between 2 burdens. The new form of government gives Congress liberty at any time by their laws to alter the state laws and the time, places, and manner of holding elections for representatives. By this clause, they may command by their laws the people of Maryland to go to Georgia and the people of Georgia to go to Boston to choose their representatives. Sounds kind of far-fetched, but just think about it. You know, we want all mail-in ballots. We want it all to be mailed in. If they really wanted to, and they wanted to hold elections, they could be that far-fetched. As I mentioned, I think in the last segment, that, everybody in the state of Ohio, I'll go to Columbus. In today's modern age, wait a minute. You talk about control there. Everybody go to Columbus. Don't even worry about mail-in. We're going to send you all to Columbus. You got to go there. Wow. Interesting. All right. We got to buzz through this real fast. There's another one, the Anti-Federalist number 36, Representation and Internal Taxation, was the federal farmer back on 10 October 1787, Richard Henry Lee. And he runs through this whole thing, and he talks that this, by a part in Article 1, Section 4, the General Legislature may do, it may evidently so regulate elections as to secure the choice of any particular description of men. It may make the whole state one district, make the capital or any place in the state, what I was just saying, the place or places of election. It may declare that the 5 men, or whatever the number may be, by the state, may choose who shall have the most votes, who shall be considered as chosen. All right. That right there goes to the point that they were concerned about. Again, they could have done mail-in ballots, but that was not a historical, it was not a component of a person's right. It was called a suffrage. You were to suffer over understanding the candidates that you would choose. You would want to, as Sam Adams talks about, when there was a real debacle, and that I have in Sam's wisdom in the promo, is that you're taking, and you look at, you consider, you have a involvement in who's that candidate. Are they moral? Do they know what the heck they're doing? Are they, or as he also talks about, Sam does, they take and they manipulate the living snot out of you just to get you to move on the emotionalism, or how they talk, how they look, how they're promoted. Oh, come on, get real. People, we have to act on our responsibility as a citizen. Oh, but that's not taught in school. You're not taught about being a citizen. You're taught that you need to get a job. It's all about economy. It's all about how you make money. Well, they don't teach you how to handle your money, but it's about making money. It's about economy. No, then you're a slave because you don't understand liberty. All right. I want to really zip down to one that it just, you have to read it. It's at the end here, and I put it there, and I said, and I have a note in red that says this is one of the hottest commentaries on this whole election thing. It's Anti-Federalist 59, The Danger of Congressional Control of Elections. Hamilton had taken in Federalist 59, addressed the issue from an opposing viewpoint, why Congress should take and have control over elections, wherein this is a whole essay by Vox Populi, and appeared in the Massachusetts Gazette, October 30th, 1787. And the writer of this is begging the people, begging for a candid public to look at this section, this fourth section of Article 1, the times and places and manners of holding elections for senators, representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations, except as to the place of choosing senators, because senators were chosen by whom? The legislature. But now in modern times, it's all by popular vote. So the senators, they can say, go here and vote, and here's when you're going to vote, and here's the mechanism by which you're going to vote. And first, what national advantage is there to be acquainted by giving them such power? What was it? The only advantage which I have heard proposed by this is, and that's what Hamilton was arguing, to prevent a partial representation of the several states in Congress. For if the time, manner, and place were left wholly in the hands of the state legislature, it is probably they would not make provision by appointing time, manner, and place for the election, in which case there could be no election, and consequently the federal government weakened. That was Hamilton. He wanted that strong. Hamilton is dancing, baby. Hamilton is loving where we are in society today. He is loving exactly that we have a consolidated government. Think about this. All right. You know what? You're going to have to read this because what do I got? 5 minutes, Kath? 4 minutes. I'm going to wrap this way. Let's get back to coronavirus and go again to SamuelAdamsReturns.net to download these notes and read all of this 10 pages of anti-federalists calling out and warning about Congress having control of elections. So let's get to this whole thing about Hamilton dancing and a consolidated government. The whole United States is shut down by analytics, not because of liberty, by the projections and false projections that people were going to die. People are going to die by God's determination and, as I said last week, maybe his judgment. You can't go against the judgment of God, and you can't go against his timeline. But what we have done, in particular, over the last 80 years, especially right there at that World War II transition, and before that, World War I was part of it, but World War II really monkey jabbered that in place, is this whole thing comes down to what I've talked to you about before, and you go look it up on SamuelAdamsReturns.net, the Kozak, K-O-Z-A-K plan, the Kozak plan. I've done enough programs on it, and then download And Not a Shot is Fired and read that, because what we have here is exactly that which is going on. We have Congress and everybody and all the bureaucrats, analytical bureaucrats, putting that pressure on the president from the top. You got to do this to save all these lives or we're going to lose 2 million people. Then you have the pressure from below by all these different groups, all of these leftist organizations, and you're going to say, quite frankly, a bunch of the right-sided people that don't understand this stuff. But more so, you have the media who's putting that pressure from below. Czechoslovakia fell to communism just because exactly that. Pressure from above, pressure from below, and now, because they got elected, just like they did in Czechoslovakia into the parliament, they got elected all of the communists. Then they didn't have the jihadists, but they had the socialist, communist, Marxists that are sitting there, that were sitting in parliament, but are sitting in our Congress, including jihadists now, that are pushing this and pushing that pressure. So what do you do in this last minute and a half? Okay, you got to educate yourself. But what you have to do is you have to start putting the pressure on your legislators. And you have to start turning off all of that other news nonsense. And you have to start getting together as a people. You do need to come together. You need to come together and in your churches. And you need to put the pressure on your pastors to be like the pastors, the clergy of the American Revolution, because that's where it's going to start. You need to understand the liberty in Jesus and act as if you really believe that God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. You know, Sunday is resurrection of the living God. And if you can't get your head, arms, and heart around that, then don't look at government. Because you already are. You're looking at the central God government to save you from a virus that God's got control of anyway. So with that, you need to be active in your home, your society, and in your church, and get it together based on these truths and understand them. And then do something. And that something is get out there and affect those who you elect. Come on back next week because, as you see, the Anti-Federalists, they absolutely got it right.